What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. It's been a little while since I've done one of these live streams, but I'm super jazzed to be with you guys and gals. In a second, I'm going to introduce a special guest who will be joining me to make sure that I dig crazy deep today on copy and the nuances and word choice and sentence structure and avoiding hyperbolic copy and all of that. But as promised, I want you to buckle up. I want you to get ready because for the next 2 hours, we're going to be digging into copy. And so we're going to be covering a variety of different topics. We're going to be going fast paced. We're going to cover a lot of stuff at some point throughout our live stream. If you've got questions, you'll be able to submit those questions. And let me just specify exactly how to do that. So you might be watching the live stream on our website, on our webpage, or you might be watching the live stream on YouTube. If you are on our page and you want to submit a question or you want a piece of copy for me and my special guest to look at, review, critique, give you feedback on, you're going to need to go over to the YouTube page. And so you can just click on the YouTube video or the title of the YouTube video on our webpage. That'll bring you over to YouTube. And then I believe there is a whole chat thing over on YouTube, and you'll be able to submit your questions there. And really, there's no question that is off limits for today. As long as it is copy related, you could submit whatever question it is that you've been pondering, wondering about, and we're going to nail it. As promised, I'm not going to do any kind of intro, any preamble, any build up. I'm going to bring on our special guest right now. He's going to join me. Let me see if I could do this right here. There he is, my man.
Hey, Todd.
Let me introduce you guys to none other than Sam Woods, the legendary copywriter, a.k.a. Sammy Slamma Jamma, a.k.a. Sammy the Stallion, or as I like to refer to him as Snivy. I'm just kidding, not Snivy. And so what's up, buddy?
How are you, Todd? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. And so I want to kick things off by picking up where we left off. So there's a lot of people that are likely watching this that saw the post, the true and false posts that you created about some different copy points. We shared a lot of these true and false posts throughout the last week, few days, whatever it is. And there were a lot of responses. And so I thought that it would be a great idea for us to dive in and talk a little bit first about two of the true false posts and kind of give the answer, so to speak, to these bad boys. And so the first one was, if I'm not mistaken, about does enough proof. And so let me see here. Todd's volume is a bit lower compared to the other speaker. Hang on. Let me see if I can fix this. Likely not. I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to audio AV, but hopefully that's a little bit better. Can you hear me, Sam?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. To me, you're very loud.
Okay, hang on. All right. And so first one, like I said, was about, will enough proof overcome a weak offer? So, right, these are two elements, right, for everybody to understand, right? The post was, it was true or false. If you have enough proof to back up how great your, or how effective your offer is, or proof to back up your claims about your product or your service, is that enough to overcome a weak offer? Was that what you were proposing, Sam?
Yes, that proof beats everything. No matter what, if you have enough proof, it'll take care of the sale for you.
Okay. And the answer to the question, right, is this is absolutely positively false. You need to understand something. Everybody listening, you need to understand that the offer is a make or break element. That it does not matter how much proof you have, how many testimonials you present, how many case studies you present, how much statistical evidence you have. behind your solution, behind your product or service, if in the end you have a weak, frail offer, it is not going to convert nearly as well. The reality of the situation is that the offer is far more important when it comes to conversions than is the copy itself, than is the messaging. It's been long said in the world of direct response that in the order of priority, it goes list or audience, meaning that number one, it's list, audience, offer, copy. List, audience being, right, that you're talking to the right people, that you know your audience, you know what they want, you know what their desires are, you know what their feelings, their emotions are, you know what their beliefs are, that you understand the problem that they're dealing with through their eyes, and you understand what the perfect solution is. And your message is aligned with those people, meaning your message is going to resonate with what it is that your audience is struggling with and what it is that they want. Second to that is the offer. The offer, a great offer, what I call a sin offer, superior, irresistible, no-brainer offer, can make up for a lot of marketing weaknesses. But great marketing, great copy will never make up for a weak, run-of-the-mill, subpar offer. The analogy or the example that I love to give, Sam, you've probably heard me give this example, dozens of times by now, is if I said to everybody listening, if I said, look, I said, I want you to sell 2 vehicles for me. One is a brand new gunmetal Aston, Martin, with all the bells and whistles, brand new, gorgeous, call it a $300,000 vehicle. And I also wanted you to sell some VW pickup truck from 1961 with a rusted front driver's side quarter panel, no AC, ripped seats. And I said to you, I want you to sell each of those vehicles for $50,000 a piece. Well, the reality is that to sell the $300,000 Aston Martin for $50,000, an extreme example of an offer, you don't need to be a great copywriter. You don't need to be a great marketer. The offer is so over the top ridiculous that it does all of the heavy lifting. In that example, your biggest issue would be having people believe that it's not stolen. Right? Like that it's not a hot vehicle, right? And so the point being that a good offer, right, will overcome, you don't need to be a great marketer or a great copywriter, but yet with that beat up VW pickup truck, rusted, no AC, to sell that bad boy for 50 grand, you better be a great marketer and a great copywriter to give yourself even a remote chance of being successful and selling that to somebody. And so the answer is that no, all the proof in the world will not overcome a weak offer. Now, I want to be clear before we move on to the second one and then get into the heart and soul of what we're going to be talking about today, the nuances of copy that sells, is like, look, am I saying that proof isn't important or proof isn't valuable? Not at all. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying that the offer is more important than the proof, or I should really say that all the proof in the world will never overcome a weak offer, but you still need proof. And this is one of the things that we're going to talk about today when it comes to copy, that proof is an essential element in your marketing message in order to turn your message from a mere string of claims about how great your product is, how great your solution is, into a rock solid, airtight, emotional, and logical argument that proves to the prospect why this is the best investment that they can make. And so, yes, proof is essential. And so what was the other one, Sam? The other one was what? Wants, needs? What
Needs versus wants. And true or false, needs are more powerful than wants when it comes to someone buying from you.
Yeah. So why don't you, let's do this. Let me put you on the hot seat. I know you weren't expecting this. Sam is here to keep me under control and make sure that I don't go off the rails with you guys. But so Sam, how would you respond to that?
I think, so a lot of people are confused when it comes to what are needs and what are wants, right? And what I want to do first is look at, well, needs, are we talking about someone just feeling, well, I need a glass of water, I'm going to go get a water, right? Or is that a need or is that a want? Well, it's both at the same time, because it's a fundamental need for you to hydrate as a human being, but the want shows up every now and then. It shows up when you're thirsty. So when you think about needs and wants, when it comes to someone buying from you, needs are deeper than wants, but the want has to exist in order for them to be interested in buying from you. So when I look at this, true or false, I'll say that, yeah, it is true that needs are more powerful than wants. However, if the want is not there, if the desire is not there, then they're not going to buy from you no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. And so great response. I'm going to give a different angle on this. I'm going to give a different angle and kind of bring it down to a very actionable level. So the way that I want you guys to look at this is that there are certain things that people either need to do, need to get, need to experience in order to get or experience what they want. So let's say, for example, part of somebody losing weight is they need to burn more calories, they need to speed up their metabolism, they need to build more muscle. Right? Those are the things that they need to do in order to, let's say in this example, in order to lose weight. Well, in our marketing message, we're ultimately going to focus on the payoff. In other words, and this is an important little lesson. I want to dive actually in right now. I want everybody to pay attention to me here. So far too often, I see the mistake in copy of what I call a faux benefit. It looks like a benefit. Let's actually back up a second and make sure that everybody's on the same page. So number one, we talk about features and benefits. That's kind of marketing and sales 101. What's the difference between a feature and a benefit? A feature is nothing more than a fact about the product or service. So anytime we talk about the product, the service, we're talking about a feature. If we say the printer is small, that's a feature. If we say the printer is gray, that's a feature. If we say that the printer is quiet, that's a feature. If we say that the printer prints 50 pages a minute, that's a feature. If we say it doesn't require, new ink or ink cartridges, that's a feature. Anytime we're talking about the product or service, that is a feature. The reality is everybody on here should know that the people don't buy products and services for features. They buy products and services for what those features will do for them. So the fact that, let's say, it's quiet, well, what is the benefit to the prospect of it being quiet? It won't interrupt them. It won't break their concentration. It will allow them, right? They'll be able to focus more on their work, right? When it produces or it prints 50 pages a minute, that's a feature of the printer. But what does that do for the prospect, right? The prospect can get their printing jobs done in a fraction of the time. Prospect can be a lot more productive by getting more done. Ultimately, what you have to understand is when people talk about, right, you'll have a printer that prints 50 pages a minute, that's a faux benefit. That seems like a benefit on the surface, but it's not. It's not a benefit. It might be something that they need, right? Potentially. But at the end of the day, people are buying results. Results are what they want. You could take this as low as, or as deep as even things like health. Somebody's got, let's say, a broken bone. And what they need is to have that bone, set in a cast or something like that. But ultimately, that's not ultimately what they want. That's not ultimately what they care about. That's not the final destination that's going to ultimately move them and get them excited. It's having their bone healed, is not having any scar tissue, is having it healed in a way where there's no pain, is being able to recover in the shortest period of time, to be able to be back playing sports or whatever it is that they were doing before as quick as possible. So it's important for you to ultimately recognize that in your copy, you've got to decipher certainly between features and benefits, but you've also got to decipher between needs and wants, because oftentimes what somebody needs is not the ultimate destination of what they want. They need something to get what they want. And what drives them to buy is the fulfillment of the want, the desire. And I'll tell you that this is a lesson, really, like Sam, like we could probably talk about this topic on a lot deeper for for the next 2 hours if we wanted to. But the reality is, this is another mistake that
Mm.
kind of talking on a high level for 1 second, that I also see a lot of marketers make, a lot of especially new folks to the world of direct response and copy, and that is their copy is not talking about the prospect and what the prospect cares about and what the prospect wants as often as they should be. The reality is, one of the very first things that I do, and I've said this, I cover this like at crazy lengths in the A to Z copywriting workshop, is that the use of the word you, yours, your, you will, those are the most powerful words in copy. People talk about the word free, and sale and discount and whatnot. Those are all secondary to you, yours, you will, you'll, right? And I look to see what percentage of our copy is using words like that, or is focused on the prospect versus focused on me, I, and as well as like them. Meaning when I say them, like I want to talk about me as little as I can. I want to talk about third parties as little as I can. Like this, I don't want to talk about the masses. If I'm talking to somebody who is a coach or consultant, I don't want to talk about how coaches and consultants can use this to grow their business. I want to talk about how you as a coach can use this to build your business, how you can do XYZ, how you'll be able to see LMNOP. And so, Sam, does that make sense? Did I breeze that?
No, it does make total sense. And I think this is where a lot of copywriters, marketers, entrepreneurs end up verging into the hyperbolic type of copy that you see everywhere, which is they think that they need to play up and emphasize and enhance whatever offer they're making, or if it's an ad, email, like whatever the piece of copy is, the need to, or the thinking is that, well, I need to make it sound great so that I can get people's attention and kind of get them to do something. But that's also where their copy ends up becoming irrelevant, because the more puffery, the more word flowery that you use, and the more you try to elevate it and use hyperbole, the less likely it is that someone will actually read what they're reading and say, yeah, this sounds good, because they'll see through those words that you're using and the exaggeration that you're using. They'll see through it. And it's usually what I think of when I see hyperbolic copy is, if your copy needs to be this dramatic, then what are you trying to cover up for? Like, what are you trying to avoid talking about? And usually is because their idea or their offer is too weak, and so they feel the need to amp it up.
Yeah, and so you're getting into a topic which is near and dear to my heart and is so insanely valuable for everybody to understand, and that's why I'm glad that we're talking about this early. And so, so Sam just talked about this idea of hyperbolic copy. Another way to think about this is hyped up copy that sounds like hype, copy that sounds like exaggeration, copy that sounds like and ultimately is puffery. Well, and so let's talk a little bit about how do you avoid that? Like, first and foremost, what causes that? And ultimately, how do you avoid it? But let's start with this, that what everybody has to understand is that today's consumer is different from the consumer of 10, 15 years ago, because today's consumer is exposed to and has been exposed to a lot more marketing messages, a lot more copy, a lot more promises, a lot more really garbage, nonsense. And so there are a lot of prospects, a lot of people in most markets that are jaded. That, like, you have to understand that. You know, if we take a step back, Sam, you know, we talk a lot about the idea of, you know, first and foremost, like we said, the audience is the single most important part of the campaign. And so every marketing campaign has to begin with you understanding your audience. In the E5 method, we refer to that as the examination stage. You have to understand, there are three things that we look at in the examination stage. We look at the prospect, competitors, and then the product that we're about to promote. As it relates to the prospect, you really, truly have to be in tune with who you are talking to, with what they want, what are their desires, what's the problem that they are solving, or ultimately what's the problem that they have that they want solved, and we'll talk about that in just a second. How do they feel about that problem, right? Are they coming into your marketing campaign, like are they encountering your marketing message with a feeling of disgust, frustration, disappointment, or are they engaging with your marketing message with a feeling of excitement, hope, right?
Yeah.
And different products, different problems, different issues will bring with them different emotions. You have to understand what they've been exposed to. What have they heard? What have they seen already? What have they been presented with? What is their feeling and beliefs about your type of product, right? What are their feelings and emotions and beliefs about other vendors of your type of product? See, you're not dealing with a blank canvas, right? You're dealing with people that have past experiences, that have had some sort of journey, that have certain desires and wants, have certain emotions and feelings coming in, and have certain beliefs. And if you don't understand those, you don't do a proper examination, you run the risk of saying something that just doesn't align with their beliefs, doesn't align with their emotions, that you're talking about a problem that they're not dealing with, or you're talking about a solution that doesn't look attractive to them. And so it all begins with, right, with understanding who the prospect is. And so before I go on, anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, I would say too, and this is where the nitty-gritty of copywriting really matters too, because at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the words that you use on a page, in an email, on an ad, wherever it shows up. And things you want to avoid is copy that is filled with adjectives and that doesn't touch on verbs. You don't want to have all claims and no proof or anything like that. So the words you use, so we just touch on the very big picture of this, but it's going to come down to the word choices you make, sentences, which we'll get into in this live stream. But I want to make that clear that even though we're talking about the bigger picture here, it's going to come down to specific words that you use. And those words don't come from your own mind. Those words come from the audience that you're selling to, or the market that you're selling to.
Yeah. So you're absolutely spot on. And we're going to get into that and get in the weeds in that, because that's what is lacking from the if not the majority, all of the copywriting trainings that I found, right? Without going into a commercial for A to Z. That's really why I decided I had to create the A to Z 2-day thing, because the nitty gritty details of word choice and sentence structure and all that is not talked about, but yet it is critical. So put that aside for 1 second and let's go back to this hyperbolic copy. And so number one, what I'm going to say is the first thing that contributes to I'm sorry. The reason why I started to talk about prospects is because what you have to understand is that, like you had said, Sam, prospects are able to see through hype today because they're more sophisticated than they were 10 or 15 years ago. This is why I say, right, in our trainings, I always talk about a known tactic is a blown tactic. If your prospect knows what you're doing, if they see that you are aggressively trying to manipulate them, they're not dumb. They're not, right? They understand these things because they've been exposed to them before. It's very different than it was 20 years ago, where, right, people weren't exposed, and so they had a different response. Today, when people feel pushed in copy, when they feel like they're being sold, right, they resist. They push back. They have resistance because nobody likes to feel manipulated. Nobody likes to feel pushed. That's why part of the way that we teach our folks to write copy is you're not pushing anybody, you're leading them. You're bringing them to the conclusion on their own so they see it as the wise decision. And so, all right, now let's get into the weeds on this. And so number one, right? And so all of this is to say that you need to avoid having your copy feel like hype, come off hyperbolic and exaggerated, because your prospects will see right through that. Right? They're not going to absorb it and say, oh, he's being accurate. He's being truthful. He's being honest. He's being authentic, or she, right? They're going to feel like they're aggressively trying to promote and sell me something. Resistance. So number one, hyperbolic exaggerated copy comes from when a marketer will start with a weak or ordinary hook or idea for their campaign, when they really haven't invested the time in developing a good hook for their marketplace based on what their prospects have seen before from other people. And so really what they're ultimately presenting is, if they're presenting any hook at all, is they're really just presenting a version of what people have already heard before, right? So if somebody said how to grow huge tomatoes, how to grow gigantic tomatoes, how to grow gigantic juicy tomatoes, all of that, right? That there is no hook in that. And prospects have heard that before. What happens when a marketer starts with a weak hook is that they have an ordinary hook. Now, to make their product sound extraordinary, all they're left with is extraordinary language, right? So now what they try to do is they try to make this thing sound special and exciting through the words that they use. And this is where you see these over-the-top, ridiculous copy style words. And I say copy style because this is kind of stuff that you used to see 10, 15, 20 years ago when I first started, like the explosive steroid-like tsunami traffic generation system, right? That floods your business with, you know, oodles of new customers or something, right? That is what you call puffery. That is what you call nonsense. And today's prospect, the majority of prospects in the majority of markets have seen through, they see through that because they've seen it before. And so, number one, if you start with an ordinary idea, right, and then you don't use extraordinary language, but you use ordinary language, now you have an ordinary idea with ordinary language nobody's buying, period. Right? So then your other option is an ordinary idea with extraordinary language, and you end up with puffery or hyped up, exaggerated copy that feels icky and right and like people see through. And so the smart move is to start with a good, solid idea, right? And we maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. I've talked about that so many times. I talk about that in A to Z. I've talked about what makes for a good marketing idea or a good hook in many different places. Next thing is what you said, and this is so important, and that is that, and this is important for everybody to understand, that good copy is not adjective or adverb driven. It's not, right? An adjective is a word that describes a noun. An adverb is a word that describes a verb or adds more, you know, to it, right? So if you say the big house, the word big is an adjective. The house is a noun. Big is the adjective. If you say the big, gorgeous house, right? Big, gorgeous adjectives. House is still the noun. If you said, you know, he runs quickly or he quickly ran, right? Quickly is an adverb. Ran is the verb. The reality is that what most people associate, new marketers associate with good copy, is adjective driven and adverb driven. But that is the reverse. Good copy is not driven by lots of adjectives and lots of adverbs. Good copy is driven by good verbs, right? Is good verbs. In this example, right? In this example, so instead of saying the big house, say mansion, right? Say, instead of saying the big gigantic house, mansion, right, is a better word to use. First of all, it tightens up the copy, and we always want to be as pithy and tight as we possibly can. You're replacing two words with one word, but it's the use of adjectives which over time, over the course of copy, feels bloated and it feels like puffery. Even, right, he ran, he quickly ran. He sprinted. He sprinted. Instead of he leisurely walked, he strolled. And
Yeah.
I know that this seems like, like, oh man, like how important is this, right? Like it seems like it's writing. I'm not a storyteller. I'm not a writer. You have to understand that, that this is the difference. These are the nuances, or one of the many nuances that makes for the difference between copy that feels like there's action in it, there's movement in it, where the prospect can envision it in their mind's eye, versus what feels like bloated, excessive language, excessive words, and hype. And so, does that make sense?
It does. And I think one thing you want to keep in mind is that when people read your copy, they form a mental picture and they have an emotional response to it that often happens subconsciously. They're not necessarily aware of why something feels like it drags on, but they feel like it's dragging on. And they feel like they can't quite follow your train of thought. And when those things happen emotionally and in their minds, they'll disconnect and just not continue reading. And those things are happening because you are saying things like, for example, he quickly ran down the stairs. If too many quickly happens in the copy, instead of he flew down the stairs is more of a picture and more of a mental impact and emotional impact than he quickly ran down the stairs. So the totality of what people is reading is forming in their head and in their mind as they're reading it. And all these little things are like death by a thousand paper cuts, like all these adverbs and all these words that drag and that don't communicate anything emotionally. When you add it all up, it ends up with, nah, I'm not going to buy this today. And then they're gone.
Yeah, well, too, Sam, that what a lot of people don't think about, and again, this is part of the nuance, is the enjoyability of reading
Mm,
and consuming the message.
yeah.
I had this is really interesting. So number one, and check this out. So I had dinner, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago with Mark Ford. For those of you who don't know who Mark is, he's like a legendary direct response dude.
Mm,
David Deutsch, who's a legendary copywriter. Paris Lampropoulos, another copywriter. I think Kevin Rogers was there. There was like a couple of us. We were having dinner in Delray Beach. And Mark, who helped grow Agora to the
yeah.
$1.5 billion behemoth that it is today, he posed this interesting question, and it ties directly to what it is that we're talking about now. He said, we analyze, so at Agora, they sell newsletters, okay? Newsletters on, financial investing, all different types of financial investing and alternative health. And he said to me, he said to us, we did an analysis of which newsletters have the highest resubscription rate. He
Mm,
said, can you guess what the number one the commonality, like the reason why, what was the commonality between the newsletters that had the highest subscription rate compared to the ones that didn't? So I thought immediately, I'm thinking to myself, it's got to have something to do with who picks the best stocks, like, right, like the best track
yeah.
record or something like that. So people gave all these different answers, and what Mark said was shocking to me, but then later on, it made total sense. He said the newsletters that had the highest resubscription rate were the ones that had the lowest FK score. Now,
Hmm,
FK score,
mm,
for everybody else that's not familiar with this, is the Fleisch Kincaid readability test. You can Google
yeah.
it. You can find it, I believe, built into like the Hemingway app. There are
Mm,
free things that you can use. Fleisch Kincaid readability test. The Fleisch Kincaid readability test basically tells you how simple something is to read,
mm,
to comprehend. And it gives you a grading, a grade level, right? And so ultimately what you're shooting for is like 7 or less. The lower the grade level on your writing, the easier it is to understand. Now, let me say this first and foremost, and then I'm going to tell you how this is connected to what we're talking about here. This doesn't mean that if your writing comes back with a grade level 6, that it's not appropriate for attorneys or doctors or judges or something like that. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that it's easy to understand. It doesn't mean that you're not
yeah.
smart. It doesn't mean that you're talking about some ridiculous topic. It just means that your writing is easy to understand. And so Mark, he had said, it was fascinating to me because I knew for years that Mark always said, he said, when new copywriters submit a piece of copy to me for critique, he said, I will not even review it until after I put it through the Fleisch Kincaid readability test, which all of you can do for free. He said, if it is above 7, I send it back to them. I will not critique it. I will not read it. Like, I won't. He said, it has to be 7 or below. Now, what contributes to a high FK score? Well, a number of different things do, including like sentence length, how big the words are. Like, are you using multiple syllable words, big words, as well as how many adjectives and adverbs are in your copy. In other words, more adverbs, right? More adjectives makes your copy more difficult to understand, right? The more words you have in your copy, like in your sentences, I'm not talking overall. I'm not talking the length of a sales letter. I'm talking the more words you try to pack into an individual sentence, the more complicated your copy it becomes, the more difficult it is to read, the less enjoyable it is to read, and the less likely that it will be consumed. And so, right? So you've got all of these things combined. The being able to picture it in your mind, being pithy, and recognizing that more adjectives, more adverbs just bloat your copy and make it feel like puffery. Good verbs. You want to look at the verbs that you are using in your copy, and you want to choose action verbs. What you really want to think about, and I know I'm going super fast here, but what you really want to think about is you want to look at your verbs and you want to ask yourself, right, is this verb conveying an image that the prospect can picture in their mind? And is it conveying a good enough image, the image that I want them to see? The only time that you should add an adjective is if there is no single noun that can do the job, and only if you're adding more information that the prospect needs. So to say the awesome house, right? What new information does that give us? It doesn't give anything. The amazing house, what additional information do we have? What else are we now able to envision in our mind's eye as the prospect if we saw amazing house instead of just house, right? It's a throwaway word. It's a puffery word.
Yeah.
It's a waste word. It doesn't allow us to see anything new. It doesn't allow us to envision anything in our mind, and it just puffs up the copy, meaning it puffs it. It adds fluff to it. You don't want that. And so anything that you would add to that, Sam?
No, I think you nailed it, Todd. I think it's one thing I would love to do, and as we get into this, is to look at actual copy so that we can call things out. I don't know if you have an example. I can make up an example later on of a lead or something that you have, because I want people to see it, not just like hear us talk about it, which is very helpful, but I want them to see it as well, where we can point out like, here's what's happening and here's why, like why you make the choices you make when you write copy, Todd. Like this is, and these are the things that go into the decision-making process too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one thing, let me see here. Check this out. Let me do this. Let me share. This is a snippet. Let me share my screen and let's see if I could do this on this bad boy. Let's see how this will work. I'll probably blow this whole thing up. And so if I do, I apologize to everybody. So let me see if I could do this. No, that's not good. This. Okay. So let me see. How do I share, not that screen, because that's not a good screen. How funny is that?
How many screens do you have? Like 5 of them or something?
I
4
have
or 5?
2, and it's a cluster. It's a total cluster. Let's see here.
I have 2 screens and I have like 40 tabs open in each screen, so I get it. It's just, and then I think I know where things are, and I never know where things are.
Yeah, wait. Let me see if I could do this. Let's see if I do this. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
You see that?
Love it.
You don't have to be a pro at and so let me do this. So you can, everybody hopefully can see my screen. Somebody tell me, I know that there's a delay with the live stream, but somebody like say, yes, you can see the slide deck on this bad boy. And so let me go through this. So somebody pop into YouTube
Yeah, I can see it, Todd.
Okay, so I'm going to trust that everybody
Yeah.
else can see it. So, right, I just want to go through. This was, a snippet from the A to Z copywriting workshop. It was 2 days, and so this is a snippet from this. But I want to show you, right? So weak verbs are, since we're talking about this, we'll put a button on this bad boy. So weak verbs are vague, they're fuzzy, they're static, and I'm going to give examples in just a second. Like a word like have, do, get, show, use. These are, he used the shovel, right? Like, or right, he's using the shovel. You could see how, and I know that this is really in the weeds, but you could see that using the shovel, what does that show you? It's very vague, right? Was he jamming the shovel, right? Was he slamming the shovel? Like, what was he doing with the shovel? He showed the I don't know why the show is on here twice, but on this list, but right, he showed the shirt. Like, see how that's such a vague, fuzzy way of talking about an action. You want verbs that demonstrate action. You want to become a student of verbs. Good verbs appeal to one or more senses. Good verbs invite us to see, hear, touch, taste, smell objects and ideas, right? Like Sam, like you said, right? Good verbs allow us to see things in our mind's eye. And it's important for everybody to understand why I keep saying that, why I keep talking. And when we get to understanding concrete language in copy, with promises, with claims, you have to understand that being able to see it in your mind's eye, being able to, as a prospect, to envision it in your mind is what creates that visceral emotional response. Without the ability to envision the outcome in their mind's eye, right, and see it in their mind's eye, be able to daydream about it, be able to envision it in their mind's eye, they don't trigger that emotional response. So when you use vague words, vague phrases, vague promises that the prospect can't picture in their mind's eye, it falls flat. Yes, and I want you to listen to me. I want to take this away for 1 second, and now I think everybody can see me here. Let's go back to this. I don't even know what I'm doing here. There we go, and then I'll bring. There we go. Okay.
Wow,
3
magic.
clicks to do that. Magic. I want you to I want you to understand this. Like, I really want you to get this. This is when you hear me talk about the nuance of copy. I want you to listen to this, okay? When I talk about the nuance of copy, this is what I mean. This is an example that it's possible that you can be presenting a promise to somebody. Like, you could say to yourself, I was told I need to focus on promises and claims. I need to claim certain outcomes. I need to claim certain results that my prospect can experience when they get my product. But here's where the nuance comes in, that if that claim is fuzzy, is vague, is general, is not concrete, and doesn't allow the prospect to envision it in their mind's eye, it will fall flat. I'm not saying that it won't work, but it won't be nearly as powerful as a claim that is concrete, specific, and appeals to the senses. And so go ahead, Sam. You look like you want to, you're chomping on the bit.
Yeah, I really want to, and I want to help people connect, because this was helpful for me when I first started learning copy, writing copy, and going through your training, Todd. Think of it this way: when you are when you're describing the benefits of what someone will experience using, of your product or service, whatever it is, you want to use those verbs right there and then, where their senses kick in, and it's, in their mind they can picture themselves experiencing what it is that your product or service does. Use those verbs right there with those benefits when you, as you say, dimensionalize the benefits, where they can picture themselves experiencing the outcomes that they want to experience. That's where those word choices will really, really matter a ton, because you don't want to use flat language when you're trying to get someone to internally experience and emotionally experience something. You want to help their senses kick in,
Yeah.
and so they can see themselves and almost experience the outcome right there and then, even though they haven't yet bought whatever it is that you're selling.
Yeah, and let's unpack that a little bit more. I know I'm probably going down. There's so much to talk about, hence why the A to Z. You know, the training was 2.5 days actually.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
But so, and this is important, and I want everybody to listen because this is one of the main issues or main mistakes that I see that we have to correct with students. And so, you've heard me talk about number one. Let's actually take a step back for 1 second. So I talked earlier about, right, prospects. We have to understand what our audience, what problem they're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
There are two different types of problems that when I say the word problem. Number one, of course, I'm talking about the typical pain. They've got knee pain. They've got a headache. They're in debt. They don't know how to get out, right? A painful situation. They're going through a bad relationship, bad breakup or whatnot. There is pain that they are trying to resolve, frustration, that the disappointment that they are trying to resolve. But then there is also unfulfilled need or desire. So if I wanted to grow a green, lush lawn and I did not know how to do that, right? That is an unfulfilled desire, right? That's an unfulfilled desire for me. Both of those categories are what we call problems, right? Both of those are what we call problems. Now, when we're examining, when we go through the examination process, like we teach, we have to identify what is the problem that the prospect has. What is it that the prospect sees as their problem that we can solve for them? Okay. Now, once we start there, and you'll see how all this connects in just a second, then we have to formulate what I call our primary promise, right? And I'm going to go through this very quickly at a high level so that everybody understands this, right? The primary promise is the ultimate outcome, the ultimate transformation, the ultimate result that the prospect wants, that your product or service, that your solution can deliver, right? I'm not talking about all of the different benefits, right? Like if we were talking about if somebody wanted to lose weight, right? And that was their main thing. They wanted to lose X number of pounds in X number of weeks. Sure, right? Fitting into better clothes, having more energy, sleeping better at night, less pain in your knees. All those things are benefits, but there is an overarching promise that we need to develop and convey. And that needs to be part of this thread throughout our copy, throughout our message. Ultimately, we're showing the prospect that we've got a different way, a better way to give them that result, to deliver that promise to them. Now, here is the mistake. The mistake that is made often is when people new to the world of copy or don't understand the nuance of copy, they end up making these vague general claims of promise. They end up presenting these very vague general promises. And I'm going to give you an example. So let's say somebody said, you'll have more energy, right? Like you'll have more energy. Now, and maybe they get even more specific and they say something like, right, in 21 days doing one thing a day, you'll have more energy. Well, here's the reality. What does that mean? What does more energy mean? Right? I can't picture more energy in my mind, right? Like it's not concrete. It's vague. It's fuzzy. Therefore, I can't sit back and say, "Oh yeah, more energy." Like I can't picture that in my mind. It's very similar to, right, in the business world when people say, right, you'll make more money or you'll be more profitable. How much more? $1? Is it life transforming profitability? Is it incremental profitability? Like, what is it? Show me in my mind's eye. And here is where, Sam, we always want to tighten up the promise so that it is specific and concrete, so that it is something that the prospect can envision in their mind that gets them excited. And oftentimes you have to put a stake, you have to put a flag in the ground. In other words, people, they want to talk about energy. You'll have more energy. Well, you've got to narrow it down to, right, you'll never have that 3 o'clock crash and need an energy drink mid-afternoon again.
Right.
That is concrete. That is specific. Right? In as little as 3 days, you'll wake up without needing an alarm, right? Fresh, ready to go with zero back pain. Like
Yeah.
that is something now that I can envision in my mind. Now I'm envisioning waking up instead of being groggy, instead of having to hit the snooze button or whatnot, instead of
Yeah.
getting out of
Yeah.
bed. Now I can envision it. That's the
Yeah.
difference from a nuanced perspective. On the surface, you in 3 weeks you'll have more energy, right? It looks like a benefit, right? You could make it is a benefit, right? I am making a promise, but it is vague. It's
Yeah.
general. It's fuzzy. It doesn't appeal to the senses. It doesn't allow the prospect to envision it. Therefore,
Yeah.
it falls flat. That's the difference
Yeah.
between copy that produces a lot of sales and copy that produces a trickle of sales.
Yeah. And I think what you said just a couple of seconds ago is the key as to why that happens, that those mistakes happen, which is that if you don't have a clear path for what your copy is aiming to do, where you know where to meet them, prospects, and how to lead them to the conclusion that they want to buy your stuff, if you don't have that clarity on that path, that's when you see people starting throwing in the hyperbole, the outlandish claims with no proof, the adverbs, the fuzziness, all the vagueness comes in because you go, well, I learned somewhere that I need to make these claims. I learned from a copybook that I need to, use a certain type of headline or subheadline. I'm supposed to do this, supposed to do that. So it just ends up being this concocted mess of different copy strategies, which they're not wrong in and of themselves, but they're not applied in the most effective way. It's because you don't have clarity on where to meet people, where they're at, the prospect, and clarity on then how to guide them to that point where they go, that's it. That's for me. I need this. I'm going to buy this. And they do.
Yeah, well said. So let me do this. Let's take a question because let me see, how do I do this? Can I do this? I thought I
You
could
can
do
do
this.
anything you want in life, Todd.
True.
Life is wide open for you.
Look at this.
Oh, look at that. Whoa.
Fancy.
Love it.
Fancy. So Leonardo said, what would be examples of good verbs? So how would you answer that, right? Because there is this idea of we'll give examples, but how would you even address that? Somebody says to you, well, what's a good verb, Sam?
What do you want people to experience and think?
Yeah.
And use a verb that will help someone think and feel what it is that you want them to think and feel. That's the first thing. Clarity on that, because there are millions, like thousands, hundreds, I don't even know. Like there are a lot of verbs out there, and anyone can be used for any purpose. But you need to be clear on what it is that you want them to think and feel. When you know that, you can make the selection.
Yeah, let's do this, and then I'm gonna answer the question in a second. So let me see if I don't, without botching this again. And so let me do this. No, that's not working. Yep, there we go. Okay,
Whiteboard.
so let me do this. Let's see if I can do this. So I think everybody can see my screen. So beautiful. So number one, this is a tool that I love. I use this tool all the time, Power Thesaurus. And so it's not the greatest. Look at our buddy Russell down here at the bottom with a little ad. So let's do this. Let's do walk, right? This is a verb. And so you can see stroll, hike, wander, right? Like march, ramble, step. And so, right, I always look for like if the word walk, is that what I am ultimately trying to convey? Or am I trying to demonstrate that, he strolled down the street, right? Like, or, he sprinted down the street. Think about the difference between the two and what it paints in your mind and what you see in your mind. Now, in this context, we're talking about, like I'm talking like story-ish. He strolled down the street. He sprinted down the street. He meandered down the street. He stumbled down the street, right? Like all those convey a different image. Well, the same thing applied to your copy when talking about what your product or solution will do applies, right? Like it applies because you're using verbs to talk about what your thing will produce, what it will do, how it'll transform somebody's life. And so the same kind of thought process needs to apply when you're choosing those verbs. the other thing that I want you to think about, so if you think about, let's just say, grow, grow a bigger business, develop a bigger business, expand your business, multiply your business, cultivate, escalate, right? Some of these just don't work. Sprout a new business, some of these, right?
Yeah.
Most of these are not going to apply. But often what I'm looking for is number one, I always try to, and I know we're talking about literally one tiny topic, one tiny nuance of copy right now, but this is valuable or should be valuable for everybody. I always look for if I'm using an adverb like ran quickly, right? Well, what else could I say besides ran quickly? Sprinted, jolted, bolted down the street, right? Like any of those. And so I'm looking for one word that would replace those two. But then the other thing that I'm applying when it comes to copy is I'm looking for words and phrases, verb-driven words, or verbs or verb-driven phrases that are not commonly used. So if everybody else says, grow a bigger list, let's say, or grow your list, well, I'll look for another word besides grow. This is something that I talk about in a different context. The idea of differentiation. I talk about differentiation in a lot of different contexts. One context is, and let me do this. Let me go back to Sam and I. So one context of differentiation is, of course, differentiating your mechanism, right? And I talk at lengths about the unique mechanism and how, right, like you differentiate how you are able to deliver the result. But another little nuance of differentiation that is often overlooked is showing up differently in your language, right? So if you're using words and phrases, verbs that your competitors are using, if your competitors are saying grow your list and you say grow your list, you end up feeling the same. It feels like more of the same. It feels like it's similar to what I've heard, what I've seen. And so you immediately get categorized in the prospect's mind, even if it's not right on this conscious level. They subconsciously are categorizing you as more of the same. And so part of that level of differentiation is looking for different words. So I want to look for what are the words, what are the verbs that would convey the image, like Sam said, that I want to convey, but also is there a different verb that I can use that's not commonly thrown around? So the copy immediately itself feels different. And so Sam, does that make sense?
It does make sense. And there's a question that just popped up, which is from Leonardo. He says, so here's a question. A good start for me is to change one verb to another more talked about by the niche. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes and no. I don't know, Todd, if you want to take this one.
No, I mean, so if the question is, Leonardo, like, should you change to a verb that is commonly used in your marketplace? The answer is no. The answer is you want the antithesis. You want the opposite. You don't want to use the same words and phrases in terms of the verbs that your marketplace is already hearing, right? Because then why yours? Why should they engage with yours, right? Remember, people don't engage with marketing messages that feel and seem like more of the same. People aren't interested in more of the same. They want new. They want different. Sometimes that is the promise is new and different. More often than not, the mechanism is new and different. And sometimes, right, the language is different. And therefore, right, this seems different. So no, you don't want to simply model. If everybody in your marketplace is saying grow your list, you don't want to say grow your list. You say instead expand your list. You say, right, multiply your list. I would say something else. So there's that little seed of differentiation. Now, this is an important point. I'm not telling you to use different for different's sake. You still need to, first and foremost, like Sam, like you said, you still need to choose a word that properly conveys the image, thought, and feeling that you want to convey. So you can start by taking the ordinary verb and now looking for options that would convey the image, the picture, and the thought that you want. And then ask yourself, which one of these are not commonly used. And then that may be the one that you go with. So still at the foundation, you still have to pick words that convey the image that you want, right? So like, I'm not going to pick, sprout your, because it's not the image that I'm trying to convey. If I want to talk about growing, a list, I might, there are words like, look, there's, you could see grow. There's somewhere on here, no doubt, there's a word like, like engorge. Like we're not choosing engorge, right? Like for obvious reasons. Cultivate, not the right word, right? It doesn't convey the right image. The other thing, for what it's worth, without going down a crazy rabbit hole, because this is also something that I teach on at great lengths, is I also look for words in certain contexts, Sam, when I'm describing the way that the product works to produce the result, and I'm talking about the payoff of the different ways that this thing produces a benefit, I look to use words that convey speed and ease, right? And so like I try to look for, does this word convey effort? Like, for the prospect, like, does this feel like, work, effort? Does this feel like long and difficult, right? Because I'm looking to stay away from that. Here's a simple example that is the most common example. And let's see, I know that there is this crazy delay, and so I don't want to sit here and wait for this, but maybe we'll you and I will blab for a minute and see if they posted here. Why do people use the word discover instead of the word learn in copy? It's kind of like a copy 101 thing, right? Instead of learn the XYZ method, it's discover the XYZ method. What is the purpose? What's the strategic reason behind that word choice of discover compared to learn? And so let's see who was the first one to pop in to the little chat area, like the answer to that.
Yeah, and while someone posts that, I want to say that on the verb topic, you want to know what verbs your niche or market is using so you understand where they're coming from, but then you want to tag on to that and then differentiate by using a slightly different verb that makes them think of what you're talking about in a new light. So if they all say, I want to grow my list, grow, you might want to use a word like, and this is, I'm not giving anyone copy, I'm saying you want to acknowledge the desire to grow a list, but then you want to use a verb that kicks in and makes them shift their perspective. So, I can multiply my list, not just grow it, because who knows what that looks like. It can be slow growth, it can be over time, but multiplying, tell someone it can be like wham, it can happen quickly and exponentially. So now we're seeing some answers pop in.
And that's you're spot on, Sam. Like that's great. So here I love the answers coming in, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to address Connor in just a second. I love the pictures in here too, by the way, of folks.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Picture of something new. Learning also seems like more work. You guys, so Valerie, Sky, what an awesome name. Skyhawk. Is that really your name? Skyhawk, because if so, you are set up to be a rock star. And Chrissy was the first one to jump in. You're right. Like, look, the reality is that learning is, right, like learn how to do something implies work. Like I have to learn. Discovering feels like you stumble on something. It doesn't feel like, right, exactly. There's all the copywriter clubs. So I'm not sure if that's Rob and or Kira. What's up, Rob? And so love me some copywriter club, Rob Marsh, Kira Hug. That, like, look, discover implies ease. Learn implies work. And there are lots of examples. Now, somebody asked back here, Leonardo said discover looks more exclusive. Veronica said learn is active. I have to do it. Discover happens to me. You kind of stumble on it. And so let me see here. But I want to go back to right here to where Connor had said, surely learn more works better than discover. And so I want to talk about this for 1 second. So look, if the aim of the prospect, this is an important point, so everybody listen to me. If the aim, the ultimate desire of the prospect is to learn something because they want to learn something, like that's the aim is to learn something, then I would use the word learn. But for the majority of examples associated with learn, most people don't want to learn. They want the result of having learned. Yeah. And so, right, it's not like it's not like, look, here is the thing. You think about this. Nobody wants to learn to generate leads, right? You don't want to learn to generate leads. You might say, yeah, I want to learn to generate leads, but that's not really what you want. That's a vehicle to get what you want. You want to learn to generate leads. Why? Because of what you believe getting leads, knowing how to get leads will do for you. That's what you care about, right? So you don't care about learning a new language. You care about speaking the language, right? You don't want to learn it just to learn it. You want to learn it because you want to speak it. If you learned it, but you couldn't speak it, you wouldn't care. That's the reality, right? Or if you either want to read it or speak it. And so I'm sharing that in this context because it's another example of you have to understand who you're talking to, and you have to understand what that ultimate payoff, what that ultimate result is that you can deliver, because that's what you ultimately want to focus on. And so Connor said, one more from Connor, how localized would that be? I'd love to hear what John Mulry has to say on this, by the way. And so John is the director over at the E5 agency. And so that's also very wise to ask that question, Connor. Why? Because it goes back to the audience, right? See, it goes back to understanding the audience and understanding what language the audience uses, what language or what outcomes the audience is interested in. And so it always goes back to the audience and understanding what drives them. And so does that make sense? Sam, is that good?
I mean, to me, it makes total sense.
I know it does.
And I think it does. It seems like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to add one more thing to this whole, I know, there's so much to cover and I'm jumping around, but there's one more thing that I want to talk about that leads to hyperbolic, exaggerated feeling copy. So we already covered this, the fact that when you start with a weak or ordinary marketing idea or hook, that you end up having to use puffery to make it sound extraordinary. The way that you fix that and solve that is with a better marketing hook, a hook that itself is extraordinary, that then allows you to use ordinary language, right, to talk about it. So an extraordinary idea with ordinary language will always beat an ordinary idea with extraordinary language. So that's number one. Number two, we talked about not having copy that is adjective and adverb driven, and we beat that into the ground. And so, right, and why you want verb driven copy, verb driven, pithy, tight, action oriented copy. And by the way, we don't have time to get into this today, but this is also why I cover this in A to Z, but you guys can look this up if you want on Google. The difference between active voice and passive voice in copy is so important. And so if you don't go through the A to Z copy workshop for whatever crazy reason, then go and just Google active voice, passive voice, and you'll see. The third thing that leads to puffed up, exaggerated feeling copy is when your copy is just a string of claims, meaning it's just a string of promises, of benefit statements, right? And there's no underlying argument being presented with proof to lead the prospect to understand why this is the best choice for them. In other words, right, that at the root of the most effective copy, the most effective marketing messages is you've got an argument that proves to the prospect, both on an emotional and a logical level, why your solution is the best option, right? Like it proves it. It's not just a bunch of claims. See, what you have to understand is like that today, a lot of copy people talk about, like, your job as a copywriter is just to talk about the benefits of your product, right? That's what they say. That's dead wrong. Dead wrong. Absolutely not. No, no. And what I want you to understand, first and foremost, what you have to recognize is that anybody can present a string of claims. Anybody can make a bunch of claims about a product or service on the internet. It doesn't take a marketing genius. It doesn't take a copywriting genius. It doesn't take wizardry. It doesn't take any training, knowledge, ethics, morals, or anything to do that. Anybody can make a string of claims. And that's why that's not enough today. Prospects know that anybody can put together a string of claims. And so when all you have is, my product will do this, 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 and this. When you get this, you'll experience X, Y, Z. And you'll experience X, Y, Z, LMNOP, right? You'll this benefit, and this benefit. And it'll do this for you, and it'll do this for you, and it'll do this for you. And there's no, here's why. Here's why it works. Here's why it works quickly. Here's why it's easy, right? Here's why it's a superior solution. Right? Here's the evidence, the proof of that, right? Like, when there's none of that, right, which is the argument portion that we talk about and train folks on, then you end up with a message that is just a string of claims. That's not a marketing message. That's a message. That's a string of claims. That's all it is. Right? There's a difference between a marketing message is a message that presents a rock solid, airtight, logical, and emotional argument that leads the prospect to see why your offer is the best option for them right now. A string of claims is just a string of claims. So when you combine those three, and now going forward, you can look at your own copy and you can look at other people's copy, and you can see, right, like, number one, is this a weak idea, like an ordinary idea, a run-of-the-mill idea, like it's been said before, it's been done before, right? Like, I've heard how to grow big tomatoes, how to grow huge tomatoes, how to grow gigantic tomatoes, right? All those are the same idea, right? So weak idea, loaded with adjectives, adverbs, puffery, like loaded with that steroid-like explosive tsunami grass growing system, right? And not verb-driven. And when it's just a string of claims. Right? When it's just a string of claims. When you combine all those three, what you end up with is extremely novice sounding copy that barely converts, if it does at all.
Yeah, and that's the opposite of what you want. So we're kind of halfway through our planned 2 hours, and we have so much more. Do you want to tell people a little bit about the A to Z? I mean, I can speak for hours about the value of it, but it would sound hyperbolic. So why don't you, Todd?
I think so. I will do it in a very hyperbolic manner. So I mean,
self-congratulatory way,
yeah. So I've been doing this for. I've been in the direct response world for 2 decades now. For many years, some of the top players online were really. I don't want to say begging me, but were really repeatedly requesting for me to share my tactics, strategies, triggers, the things that I do in copy in a training. A couple of months ago, I decided to do it for my highest level clients. It turned out, of course, to be a 2.5 day live workshop, virtual workshop. So you're talking whatever it is, 15, 16, 17, 18 hours, I think, total, covering every single trigger I use, technique, tactic, strategy from beginning to end. And I shared it all with examples and, tons of PDFs and all the slides and whatnot. And 2 things. Number one, I really felt compelled to do this because there's no other training out there that covers the nitty-gritty nuances of writing copy. Like, for example, what it is that we talked about today, or sentence structure, right? There's a way to structure certain sentences so that they have power. There's a difference between, for example, leading with a benefit or ending a sentence with a benefit and burying the benefit in the middle of the sentence, right? And and this stuff matters. And it's the stuff that often isn't shared in copywriting training because the masses don't want to, they don't want to hear it. And so what ends up happening is people get trained on the superficial level of copy, and they learn copy, they write copy, and stuff still doesn't work, and they don't understand why. And that's because they were never taught and shown the nuances. And so that's what I wanted to do. That's what I did over 2.5 days during the A to Z copywriting workshop. It is truly the workshop, the training that I wish I was given when I was first trying to develop A-level copywriting chops. And you will not need another copywriting training ever again when you go through this.
Yeah.
It covers every single thing that you need to know, from high level down to in the weeds, nitty gritty, punctuation, opening sentences, close, segue, guarantee, the lead, the argument, offer presentation, and everything in between. And I guarantee the overwhelming majority you have never heard anybody touch on. And so today, I believe, Sam, right, just at noon, we opened up, we decided that we were going to take the recordings for the first time ever, and we were going to make them available with some other bonuses to our tribe, only for the next, I believe, 3 days. And so from today through Sunday, you can get a copy of the A to Z. If you're on our webpage, there should be a button below this video. If not, I'm going to pop the link in, I think let me see if I could do this. It is toddbrown.me/AZ. And so I believe I just popped it right into the chat for the folks on YouTube. Go over, you can read all about it, read through the whole thing. You'll see there's a tremendous amount of information on there about all the different triggers and gambits and closes and openings, and even things like framing and steering choice and like you name it on there. You'll be able to read all about it. I'll tell you that if you believe and recognize the value of better copy in your business, if you believe that better copy would allow you to grow your business bigger, quicker, make more money, there is no better investment than you can make than investing in this A to Z copywriting workshop recording bundle. Like I said, go to toddbrown.me/AZ. And so there you go. Little commercial, Sam.
There it is. Boom.
And so, so let's see. Let's take a couple more questions before we dive back in. So let's see this. So Chrissy said, take note of Todd's sales letter to sell A to Z. Also, very smart. I love it.
Yeah, it's a masterclass in and of itself.
Okay, so somebody was answering a question there. Todd goes in deep in the A to Z workshop, and it's presented in a logical, easy to follow manner. Thank you so much, Chrissy. Look at this. This is Todd goes deep in the A to Z logical, easy to follow manner. Now I'm more confident. All right. Wow. I did not ask Chrissy to do that, and so Chrissy, thank you so much.
Wow.
Let's make a note and get Chrissy something nice afterwards. And I think also I saw Scott earlier said something really nice. Let me see here. Is there anything else?
Yeah, the couple of, one is the main difference between promise and claims and benefits, and another one is how do I train myself to write in a specific concrete language. So two from the same person.
Okay,
Vivek,
so let's do this over here. So I'm terrible with names, and so hopefully, is it Vivek? What is the main difference between promise and claims and benefits? So great question. So the main difference between, I want you to think about the primary promise, not lowercase promise, okay? Like, because you could make the case that a promise of benefit, a claim of benefit is the same thing, right? When I say promise, when I've been talking about promise, I use the word or the phrase primary promise, capital P, primary promise. The difference between the primary promise and benefit statements are that the primary promise is the one overarching transformation outcome result that is most important to the prospect. That is the thing that they are ultimately after in the end. What's the thing? If you could wave a magic wand and grant them one result based on the problem that they have that you can solve or alleviate or fulfill for them, what is that one overarching result or transformation? That's what I mean when I say the primary promise. Benefits or claims of benefit. And when I say a claim, right, we claim your product can do something, right? So a benefit is how your product, service, or mechanism improves your prospect's life, how it'll relieve a pain point, how it'll give them a result, how it'll give them more of what they want, how it'll take away pain that they don't want. That's a benefit. right? When we're talking about what the prospect can experience and how their life will be improved in some way, that's a benefit. A claim in copy is we could be claiming that they will get fast results, right?
Yeah.
Like we could be claiming that it's easy to use. We could be claiming that it's different from everything else. We could be claiming that it's better. Like I could make a claim right now and say, the A to Z copywriting workshop is better than any other copywriting training out there. And if that's all I said, right? And I believe that that's 100% true. And I can tell you why. I kind of already did. But if all I said in my thing was, it's better than any other training, and it is super comprehensive, and you'll never need another training, and there's nothing that it doesn't cover that you need to know in there, and you're gonna love it, and all I did was just make a bunch of claims, right? Well, what do you really expect me to say? If you know that I'm selling something, what do you expect me to say? You expect me to say those exact things. It's great. It's wonderful. It's easy. You can do it, right? And so, of course, that's what they expect you to say. That's what they're expecting to hear from you. If that's all you say, well, then all you're doing is fulfilling what it is that they expect. This is where, right, we come in, and I'll tell you, right, it is the most comprehensive program on copywriting there is, because it covers all of the things that the other programs don't. For example, the nuances of word choice, right? It covers framing, it covers sentence structure, it covers, right, the passive voice, active voice, it covers objection handling, it covers blah 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 blah, blah. And I could go through and give you the reason why. It's easy to follow, and the reason why is right? Like you won't need another training on this. The reason, that's a claim. The reason why is and then I can give you the proof. You see, so that's the difference between the primary promise is that one overarching transformation that you are presenting, right? A benefit is any way that your product, service, or mechanism improves your prospect's life. And a claim is anytime you're claiming something to be true, period. And so hopefully that makes sense. Was there another? Oh, there was one more question. How do I train myself to write in specific concrete language in my copy? And so, Sam, before I jump in, is there anything that you would say to that?
The only way I've found to do that is to write and edit and write and edit and go through passes through your copy. Maybe you, Todd, but I will never write stellar perfect copy the first time I write something in a Google Doc. It just doesn't happen. So what you have to have a practice of, or that I suggest, is that you get it out as a draft, and then you go back and you do passes through. And for each pass through the copy that you do, you look for a specific thing. So one pass, I might go, I'm going to see what verbs I can replace. Another, and then I do it. And then I go back and I go, I want to see how I can change sentence structure to be more to help people see and touch and smell and imagine what it is that they're going to experience. So go through several passes of editing in your copy, and once you make a habit out of that, that time period of editing will, for me anyway, is shortened. So now it's easier for me to edit now than it was like 2 years ago, right? Like it's just, you become better at it. So that's a very tactical thing that I would suggest, is just get it out, edit and edit and edit, and look for things that Todd teaches you to look for. Like in the A to Z, the things you go through are so, like, I have another 5-6 rounds of editing that I do now after going through the workshop, because I go, oh, I didn't even think about looking for the framing. I didn't even think about the specific word choices I could have done differently. So write and edit. That's it.
Well said. I'll add two quickies to that as well, and you're spot on. Look, the reality is that the first draft is always garbage. The reality, if we talk for just a minute about that, the truth of the matter is that your first draft you should write as quickly as you can. I would tell you that you should try to get it out of your head and get it down on paper as quickly as you can. So one of the things that you don't want to do when you're writing copy is you don't want to go back and forth between kind of writing and editing, because they use two different sides of your brain. And so the best thing that you can do is to just get it down on paper as quickly as you can. Know that it's going to be banged up. It's going to be raw. Like, don't edit. Don't edit, just write. No, you might like, don't go back and delete a part and then rewrite. It just write, let it flow, knowing that it's going to be banged up, and then you're going to go back and edit. You have to understand that what you see on the net published in terms of good copy from folks that are able to produce sales from their copy every day like clockwork, what you see on the web is not the first thing that was put down on a piece of paper, right? And so that is, get that out of your head. Like, that is an extreme rarity, even for me, right? Like, I'll go through maybe two to three, versions. I'll start with a draft, and then a second thing, I clean it up, and then I'll have a third one, and that's the one that gets, the final gig. The other thing is, don't make the mistake when you are writing as well of write and then read, and then write and then go back to the beginning and read, and then write and then go back to the beginning and read, and then write and go back. Don't do that. That is such a waste of time. Get it down on paper as fast as you can. One of the other things as it relates to that I do is I like to talk out loud while I'm writing. I don't like to people have asked me throughout the years, like, do I record the audio and then just transcribe it? I don't do that. I don't really like that. It's not my style. I like to write, but I like to speak out loud as I'm writing. And the reason is because I want to write like I talk. Good copy is closer to the spoken word than it is the written word, even though we're writing it. It's closer to the spoken word than the written word. It's closer to a conversational tone than it is, me writing a great essay or something like that. And so just some tips there. The thing that I would say, going back to the question, two things is, one is you have to just be intentional and sensitive to am I giving detail? Detail in copy, which certainly, one of the things that I talk about in A to Z, and I know, I'm sorry, I'm bouncing all over the place. There's so much to talk about. I'm trying to just talk about, a lot, as much as I can here. But we talk about the use of certain types of stories, and the mystery, and we talk about avoiding the bald story, right? And this was something that I learned many moons ago from Clayton Makepeace, the late great Clayton. And the idea of a bald story is a story that is missing detail, right? Detail is what gives it that, detail. Can they picture it in their mind? And so you have to learn to, when you do go back on the second pass of your copy and you read, you have to step outside of your own head, and you have to read the copy as if you were a stranger. I mean, as if you were, as if you were a cold reader, because you can't be too close to the copy, because, there are things that you see that you get, I know what I'm trying to say. I understand, no, you've got to recognize that you're writing this for somebody else that's not at your level of knowledge. You got to avoid the curse of knowledge. You got to make sure that you're using their language, that you're talking about what they want. That's where you want to look for, am I being specific and concrete? The other thing that'll really help, and I can't even believe I'm going to recommend this because I don't recommend this often, but specific to this question, is read good fiction. Fiction, right? Not nonfiction, fiction. A great person to read is Lee Child novels. Lee Child novels are great for a couple of reasons. Number one, good fiction has to deliver detail, right? Because it has to allow you to picture the person in your mind, what they're doing and how they're doing it, right? Or else it's not good fiction. You don't enjoy a story where you can't envision it in your mind. The beauty of a good fiction, a good novel, is that you can picture it in your mind. There's a movie going on in your mind. And I always say, with our copy, we're the director of the movie playing in the mind of the prospect. The other thing that's really valuable about Lee Child novels is two things, just while we're talking about it. So pay attention to the detail, how he describes things and the action and there's movement, right? Number two is pay attention. This is something that we talk about with stories in A to Z, that he starts in the thick of things. In other words, the story is not like Bob woke up and decided to brush his teeth, and then he combed his hair and he had a couple of eggs, and it's like Bob looked down and saw the bullet wound in his leg. Like that's the first sentence of a novel, right? That from Lee Child, like where it's, and you're automatically thrown right into the thick of things. The other thing that is extremely valuable, which we also talk about in A to Z, I think at some point in the A to Z, I recommend also Lee Child in there, believe it or not.
You did.
I did. Okay. Is how short and pithy his sentences are, right? And it makes his stuff so easy to read. There's a punch to it. There's a momentum to it. And that is another nuance of copy, right? The momentum, because it makes it, when you know, for those of you that have studied copy for any length of time, maybe you've read Joe Sugarman, great, you know, one of the legends of advertising. And Joe talked about this idea of creating a slippery slope. And everybody assumes, and this is what's taught in the majority of copywriting programs, assumes that what Joe meant when he said that was solely open up the sales letter or the marketing piece with a sentence that drives somebody to consume the next sentence, right? And then get them to consume the next sentence, like create the slippery slope. And that's right. That is part of it. But the other thing that's part of it is the momentum and pace of the copy that makes it brain dead simple to consume, where it, right? You have to understand, and this goes back to the FK score that we talked about earlier, that copy that is difficult to consume, that's a slog, that requires energy. You have to understand that your brain burns calories. When you do mental work, it can be exhausting. No prospect wants to be exhausted while they're consuming your marketing message, while they're reading and trying to figure out what you're trying to say in this. But yet somebody like Lee Child, right? He made it so it slides. Before you know it, you're 4 chapters in and you're like, I can't put this thing down. It's crazy. I can't even believe, like, right? Because it's easy to just consume it, right? It just it goes in so simply. And so,
that alone is almost worth this entire live stream, because so much of copy training that exists out there, it's useful. It's not bad stuff, but it teaches you certain pieces like templates and, you know, use these formulas and so on. They can be helpful to get started and to you know, get your mind in the right place. But copy that doesn't flow the way you just described it, that's easy to consume, it doesn't matter if the copy is perfectly following the conventional wisdom of copy that everyone tells you to do. If the copy is not easily consumed, I don't care how many rules it checks off and how, you know, accurate from a scientific perspective it is. It doesn't matter. If it doesn't get consumed, it doesn't get consumed. You can have a piece of copy that follows none of the conventional standard formulas, headlines, templates, this, that, the other thing, but it flows and it reads easily, and people will end up buying because of it. So it's not so much about following very specific formulas and templates and all the things you can find just from a Google search. Forget about that for a second. Make sure what you're writing can be consumed easily. That's like step number one. And it's the most important step, which most people just overlook because they think they have to follow a certain format.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, and I certainly don't want this to turn into a commercial for A to Z. And so it's not going to, but you know, I also think, I believe, Sam, that writing copy is a learnable skill. It's not a talent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it truly is a learnable skill. And, you know, but I think today what it takes to have a marketing message that converts is different than what it took 10 years ago or 15 or 20 when I started. Like when I started, you know, like I look back at some of the copy that I put out and I'm like mortified, you know, today, right? And I know that if I took that copy and I tried to use it today, it would get slaughtered. Back then it worked because people weren't exposed to nearly the amount of marketing messages that they are. The reality is this, and this is what everybody has to deal with. And then we'll get back into answering some questions and delivering some more gems. But, you know, the reality is this, that everybody has to understand that today it's easier than ever before to put up web pages, to put up funnels, right? Like, there are a lot of tremendous tools out there that make it brain dead simple to put up web pages. And so a lot of people do. There are more funnels, out there published live on the internet than ever before in the history of, of commerce, right? And because of how easy it is, what that also means is that there's a lot of garbage copy out there. And so the problem with that is that puts markets on edge, because right now you're competing with a lot of noise. They immediately want to look to see, is yours like everybody else's? Does it sound like it? Does it feel like it? Does it come off like it? So there are things today that we have to overcome in terms of skepticism and doubt and belief that weren't as prevalent, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And so that's why the nuance matters. The other thing that I'll say is, is that, I think another reason why I felt it was time for me, like I had to do this 2.5 day thing, which was exhausting, right? 2.5 days it was exhausting. Preparing for it was exhausting, let alone delivering it, was because, like I would see, like you said, good, copy that had like the core components there, but it was the nuance of it didn't flow. It was punchy in the wrong areas. It like fell flat in certain areas. It was a good story, but it was delivered the wrong way because things were out of order. It used words that made it feel more difficult. And so with a few tweaks, you could turn that, that copy that was struggling into something that, is shining. And so it looks like, here's a question. Let me see this. So let's see this. So, hey, what's a good book author that gives you insight into human motivations, like a storyteller who gives good insight into the emotions, compelling characters? And so I'm not sure if this is the author that you're, or the type of book that you're looking for. But what I would tell you is, so first of all, this is an interesting book. I got to tell you that this is an interesting book that, okay, it's not a bad book. It's an interesting book. This was recommended. Kevin Nations recommended this book to me. Kevin's like a sales trainer dude. And it's interesting. It's old, but it's interesting, and it does have to do with a little bit of what you're asking. But the book that I would tell you to go to, which is on the shelf in the back, is Vic Schwab. I believe it's How to Write a Good Advertisement. Is it How to Write a Good Advertisement or Great Advertisement, Sam? Which one?
Good. I think it's good.
How to Write a Good Advertisement by Victor Schwab. That's a great book. That's a book, honestly, that number one, everybody should have on their copywriting shelf. It's on the shelf there. And it's like a great primer for copy, like especially if you're new to copy. It's a great book. And it also goes into desires and like the common desires that people have, so that you can understand what really moves people. And so hope that makes sense. Is there another question in there? Let's see this. I'm going to display this. Ooh, not a question, but a positive comment from Strategic Blueprints Consulting. I like it. Let me see here. Did I miss any other questions?
There was something further up. I don't see it now, about the unique mechanism. And what's the difference between a unique mechanism and a USP, for example? I saw that earlier.
Okay. So let me see. So yeah. So this is easy. So I'll bang this out. I can't find the question on the list. It's probably there somewhere. But so very, very simple. So what's the difference between a unique mechanism and a unique selling proposition, a USP? So first of all, the USP was coined years ago by Rossa Reeves. There's a lot of different definitions for the USP, but the simplest definition for you to use is USP, unique selling proposition, is when your product offers a benefit that other competing products or services don't offer. So when your product or service is able to deliver a benefit to the prospect that the prospect values, and no other competitor in your marketplace is able to deliver that benefit, you have what's called a unique selling proposition. Great example of this is when Uber first hit the scene, right? Uber, you could hail a ride with your phone. You didn't have to have cash on you. You could see when your when your driver would get there. You can choose a type of car that you wanted, right? There were these benefits that you could only get with Uber that you couldn't get with yellow taxi cabs, right? Well, we know, of course, today with other rideshare apps, Lyft and whatnot, that's no longer a unique selling proposition for Uber. But USP is when your product or service offers a unique benefit that your prospects care about and no other competitor does. The reality is that today USPs are rare. To say it's still talked about in the copywriting world and the marketing world, but USPs today are rare. They're typically associated with disruptive technologies like Uber, or like when Netflix first came on the scene and you didn't have to, you could just stream videos. Today we know that streaming videos is no longer a unique selling proposition. And so it's rare today, a USP. And that's why we use and teach extensively the unique mechanism. The unique mechanism is not a unique benefit. It's not even a unique promise. The unique mechanism is how does your product or service uniquely solve your prospect's problem? How does it deliver the promise that you're making? And the beauty of a unique mechanism is that it allows you to make the same promise that other competitors are making. It allows you to take the promise that is exactly what your market wants, that maybe competitors are also promising, and it allows you to differentiate what it is that you're offering because you have a mechanism, a different way of delivering that result to the prospect. And so I hope that answers that question. And so,
by the way, I have the first edition of Influencing Human Behavior by Overstreet. It's a very old looking book. I got it a couple of years ago.
You're a show off, Sam, and that's all.
I am a show off.
It's
the only thing I can brag about on the books.
I would have that displayed. I would actually change your picture right now to that book cover and leave it up the whole time.
Let me go get the book. Let me show you.
Please do.
And I also want to go get the one thing that the A to Z comes with is the humongous, massive swipe file. So first of all,
that's impressive. I have I have the mass-produced version, and
you do
have the original.
I can sell this to you for a cool $5,000 if you want.
It's possible. I mean,
like the pages are yellowed, like you know what I mean. Like it's just
I like that. You see that? That to me makes it look more valuable. Yeah.
And the smell.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But then you also have this, not quite, the same look and feel, but this is one out of, I don't even know how many, Todd, but it's insane.
Yeah. Let's talk about that real quick and then get to some final gems for everybody and send everybody on their way. Cause we could certainly go for, I can talk about this stuff obviously for days here. And so what Sam just showed you, this is really cool. This is something that is near and dear to my heart. So for something like 12 years, maybe even more, I saved every single direct marketing piece that I got in the mail. So every piece from Dan Kennedy, everything mailed out by Jay Abraham, everything mailed out by Russell Brunson, and every list that I was on, for Agora, all the financial publishers, Boardroom, you name it, like every mail, and I was on, and am on everybody's list. And so for 12 years, I saved every single thing, promoting all the events, the webinars, back teleseminars when those were being promoted, new campaigns, every offer, new books released, you name it, all I saved it. And it built up in tubs. Originally, I started saving it because I wanted to use it as a swipe file for me. Like it was it's got stuff for promoting, like I said, events, physical products, digital products, courses, masterminds, you name it in there. And then it started to grow and the thing became huge. And I had these tubs in my garage of all this. And then I said, what am I going to do with this? This thing is huge, right? Like over a decade of some of the best mailers there that you can't find online because there's no record of them online because they were direct mail pieces. And so what I decided to do was I decided to bundle it up. I had the whole thing digitized. It cost me a pretty penny to have somebody on my team digitize the entire thing. it turned out to be something like, I believe, 4,000 pages plus in different binders. What you saw Sam show you was one binder. I believe in it there are 5 binders, and everybody that grabs the A to Z recording bundle between today and Sunday gets a copy. It cost me, I mean, I believe the cost to print it and ship it is $200 and some odd dollars. The cost for me to print it and ship it. And so
I read it in bed at night, and my wife is not happy about it.
yeah, it is a beautiful it's a beautiful thing. And so let me see here. And so let's take one more question and then go back into one more topic here. And so let me see. So yes, the recording will be available, assuming everything goes well on YouTube. It should be available as soon as we're done. Love this, Todd. Thank you so much, Sky. Awesome, love that. Your beard is really impressive. Your beard is really impressive. It's amazing how many people now, Sam, on podcasts start off where they're like, the first question that I want to ask you, Todd, is what is your beard routine? Like, please don't ask me that.
So this is all I get after like 2 months of trying to grow my beard. It doesn't happen. So I need your advice, Todd. What product?
There is no. It's genetics. I wish that there was advice that I could. Let me see.
So a big beard is common to trolls. Is that what you're saying? That's a common feature of trolls.
Oh, see where it's going, guys? It's deteriorating. And so somebody said, I'm an E5 customer, also on Brian Kurtz's Titans Mastermind and Kim Schwam's Fast Track to A-List Copy Coaching. Does A to Z come with your copy review, doctoring, personal input? No. And so that I do with our top 1 members. That's well beyond this bad boy.
But there will be a live call.
Oh, there is. That's right. There is a special, one of the things that we're doing, and I feel bad that I feel like I've been in commercial mode, and so I want to go back to giving some value and on a killer note. But one of the things that we are doing is for everybody that grabs the A to Z bundle between today and Sunday, which is when it expires, Sunday night, and then it's coming. That's all she wrote for it. 2 weeks from now, I believe we already have scheduled a 4-hour, like a half day private session just for folks that pick up this bundle to get on with me and to actually pull up my screen, do work, rewrite copy, and show you how it's all done. And so even though there's no like personal one-on-one input, that half day session is just for folks just for folks that grab the A to Z bundle. Look at this. I got to bring this up. My man, Peter is a legend in the world of Agora, financial publishing, direct response. This is a guy that has written copy that has produced big money. I miss you, buddy. And so, all right, let's cover one more thing, Sam.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know if you have any copy specific. It could be a lead or something else. Any piece of copy where we can point out what's happening in the copy. You see what I'm saying? I don't know if you have a lead or past promo.
Yeah, let me see if I could do this. And then I'll share my screen.
Because I think it would be so cool to see actual copy and then you just pointing out why you wrote it the way you wrote it.
I do. So hang on 1 second and we'll pull this up and I'll walk through some copy here. So I'm about to, let's move this over. I love this piece that I'm about to show you guys because of a couple of reasons. And so let me see if I can get rid of this and then share my screen. No, secondary display. So now, Sam, you can see the screen with the promo on here?
Yep.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so I love this. I want to share the lead of this campaign. And many of you that have paid attention to, certainly those of you that have been through E5, this should look familiar to you because this is what I call really the perfect funnel opening. This is kind of my go-to lead. So right when, and I talk about this in A to Z, but I want to show you something here. And so what I want you to notice is, and I want to break this down for you. What I want you to notice is that for me, right, I consider the lead everything up to when I introduce myself. And so the very first thing that I want you to notice is that I want you to notice where I introduce myself in this little sales letter. And this is really kind of what I would call a short form sales letter. So there's not a huge amount of copy on here, right? Like this is not like a monster sales letter, but you'll notice that I don't introduce myself until I am down here. And that's because the reality is that nobody cares about me. When we're advertising this to cold traffic, when we were driving paid media to this, and we invested a lot of money over many, many months driving traffic to this offer, they don't care about me. They care about themselves. Now, and so what do I mean when I say they care about themselves? Well, one of the ways that I approach the lead, right, which is the first 350, 400 words or so of your marketing message. I don't care whether it's a webinar. I don't care whether it's a VSL, whether it is a long form sales letter, short form sales letter. It's the first 300, 400, 500 or so words of your message. The lead is all about doing one thing and one thing only, and that is setting the emotional hook. You have to understand that for your prospect, right, you don't try to appeal to their logic until you've hooked them emotionally, right? The brain or the head follows the heart. And so, in other words, the head will look for justification for what the heart wants. And so we always speak to the heart first. And so we set the emotional hook. How do we set the emotional hook in the lead? We set the emotional hook in the lead by talking about presenting, in this case, the unique mechanism, which I'm going to show you. I'm going to walk you through sentence by sentence so that you can see this. The unique mechanism, and we tease out what it will do for them. So basically, we're looking at the lead and we're saying, right, I'm going to bring the most exciting, juiciest bits about what this thing can do for a prospect, what it doesn't require them to do, right? I'm going to lead with that. And then once I get them to say, wow, this sounds amazing, like this sounds amazing. Now prove to me that it'll work and prove to me that it'll work for me. That's when I go into the body. So in other words, by the end of the lead, I just want the prospect to say, wow, dang, this sounds amazing. Like this sounds amazing. This sounds great. But now prove to me that it'll work and prove to me that it'll work for me. And so, right, that's it. I'm not trying to do anything else. I'm not trying to get them excited about the offer. I'm not trying to do, I just want them to get excited about what the unique mechanism can do for them. So number one, you'll also see that you'll see a couple things in here that we're going to touch on new and we're going to touch on speed. By the way, I think this is maybe, I don't know, 3 years old, something like that. And so if there is another offer in the marketplace that keep in mind, understand the context. This was like 3 years ago that I used this. But so here, borrow a bestseller, get flooded with new customers in just days. Borrow a bestseller is the unique mechanism. That's the way, right? In quote, borrow a bestseller. The idea, what does that mean exactly? How do you borrow a bestseller? That's the mechanism that allows you to do this. You've got new, you've got fast, you've got easy, you've got fast, you've got payoff. Now look at the opening here, right? This may sound, notice this. I'm not explaining, I'm not teaching, I'm not educating. All I'm doing up to this point is setting the emotional hook. All I'm doing is trying to lead the prospect to say, this sounds amazing, sounds awesome, like sounds really, really, really compelling. Now prove to me that it'll work and prove to me that it'll work for me. And so if you look at this, right, this might sound crazy. It's working like nothing I've seen before. Choose any best-selling book from any author, and you can borrow it to fill your business with new customer sales in as little as 5 days. So once again, you'll notice something else that I talk about in the A to Z, and that is that repetition in your copy is good, but being repetitious is not. So repetition, driving home the same core idea and promise is critical. right? Just because you said it once doesn't mean you don't have to say it again, right? So I want to continue to drive home the main idea, the main promise, the main theme, but I don't want to be repetitious. Repetitious is when you say it the same way every time. You use the same words, the same phrases. So what you're going to notice here is that I'm saying and conveying the same idea, the same promise over and over and over, but I'm changing the way that I'm saying the promise. See, again, word choice. I'm not just saying it the same way, the same exact words, the same exact phrase over and over. I'm changing it up slightly so it doesn't feel repetitious, but allows me to use repetition. Right? Because I already said up here, borrow a bestseller, get flooded with new customers. Now over here, I say choose any best-selling book from any author, borrow it, and fill your business with new customer sales. It's really the same thing that I said up here, right? It's just saying it a little differently. But now I'm going to unpack it. So, right, get new customer sales in as little as 5 days, and you keep 100% of the money. You can use a borrowed bestseller campaign. This is another way of talking about the mechanism over here. You can use a borrowed bestseller campaign with new books, old books, classics, even books which just hit the shelves. It doesn't matter. Pick any one, borrow it, and fill your business with a surge of fresh buyers. Notice I'm saying the same thing here that I really said over here, which is the same thing that I really said over here. But I'm just changing up the words, changing up the format so it doesn't feel like all I'm doing is saying the same thing over and over. As well, I'm giving more detail. You keep 100% of the money. That is a benefit. You'll also notice something else over here. Notice you can borrow to fill your business with new customers as little as 5 days. You keep 100% of the money. You can use the borrowed bestseller campaign, right? Pick anyone. Fill your business with a surge of fresh buyers. And you can do it for as long as you want to continue to drive more and more sales. Start small, start big, however you want. You'll notice the use of the word, right? You, your, you will, you can, you, like we talked about earlier. You could do it for as long as you want to continue to drive more and more sales. Benefit, start small, start big, however you want. Conveying simplicity, conveying ease. The borrowed bestseller campaign is the perfect advertising method for you. If you're short on time, don't have a product yet, don't feel like creating a new product, or just want the hefty credibility boost of borrowing a bestseller, this will get you new customer sales like nothing you've seen before. And you can do this no matter what niche you're in, what product or service you sell, or whether you're a new entrepreneur or grizzled veteran. You don't need an email list. You don't need any joint venture. You don't need social media. You don't need any special connections. In fact, best-selling authors will love you for it. Best part of all, launching a borrowed bestseller is easy and fast. You can start seeing new sales in as little as a few days. But you might want to jump on this now before one of your competitors beats you to the punch and borrows the perfect bestseller for your type of business. Hi, my name is Todd. Notice how all I'm doing there is setting that emotional hook to get them to get folks excited about this mechanism, this method. I'm not giving them detail, right? That's all I'm doing in the lead is setting that emotional hook. Then the last thing that I want to show, Sam, and then you can jump in, is this. Now I go into the body. I quickly go through this very brief credibility stuff right here. For me, this is it right here. Usually it's even shorter than that for me. Now I go into the body. And what you're going to notice here is that I want you to see something. Look at the scroll bar right here. Look at the scroll bar off to the right of the screen right here. I want you to see how low this goes before I even talk about the product. So now what I'm going to talk about here is I'm talking about this mechanism, the borrowed bestseller or the borrowed bestseller campaign. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about my product, right? This is a little known customer generating move, the mechanism that is used by the big dogs. Here are examples, right? I didn't just claim that it was used by the big dogs. Here's an example. Newsmax. They use this. They continue to grow their database every month using this. Here are examples. After a little more research, I discovered they're just the beginning. Here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one. You'll notice it's not just claims. It's a claim with evidence to back up that the biggest mailers in direct response are using this. Go through, and here, more about this. They didn't write them. They didn't invest anything creating them. They don't have any special deal. They simply borrowing them. They're using it, right? Think about it. There's no writing. I'm talking about the mechanism. Now, I just want to fast forward this for time purposes. You see this? All of this is me just selling the prospect on the idea of why the mechanism will do everything that I said in the lead, of why they should believe that the borrowed bestseller works and that it can work for them. There's no writing. They have a saleable product instantly, right? You could do it in almost every topic imaginable, all these topics. Here are examples right now, books that are selling for $24 on Amazon that you could buy, or excuse me, you can borrow for as little as 50 cents to $3, right? I decided to try this myself. I did it, right? Here was an example, of me borrowing this book over here. Then, right, I borrowed this book for $3. I sold it for $16.95 on a campaign that I did for Robert Cialdini. Here is, Russell Brunson thought it was a brilliant idea, reached out to me, blah, blah, blah. You can do this over and over again. It's as simple as this. Here are some ideas for how you can do this. Look at where I am. I'm still not talking about the product. I'm not talking about the product until all the way, right? I'm still not talking about the offer or the product. I'm still just getting buy-in on the mechanism until right here. So here's what to do now. And then this goes into the product. All of this, look at where this is, up until right here, up until here. Only this part right here is the offer. That's it. That is the only part where I talk about a product that you can buy. Up to this point, I never mentioned the idea of a product or anything. And so, hope that makes sense.
It's as clear as mud, as they say.
I like that. That really makes me feel
clear.
terrible. Yeah.
That was great to see, Todd. Thank you.
Let's see. So let's see if we can wrap with some questions. We'll take some final questions and then we'll send everybody on their way. So I appreciate everybody listening to me.
There are a few that came through. Question like, how do you write copy for upsells? And how do you deal with different offer types or different market level awareness? There's a few in there that we can probably touch on.
Yeah, so let me see here. So Vivek here, let me just answer this question real quick. So Vivek said, why do you tell them what they don't need this, they don't need this, they don't need this? Because this is an example of when you know your marketplace and you know that your marketplace is gonna think or could think, well, don't I need this, or doesn't it require this, or won't I have to spend money? Like, right? Like if they're if you know your market and your market will immediately default to, oh, like I'll probably need this to make it work. I'll probably need this to make it work. I'll probably need this to make it work. And that's not true for your mechanism or your offer. Well, you want to overcome that. You want to let them know you don't have to have this. 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 You don't have to have any of those things. And so when your market may think they need something that they don't need in order to make your mechanism work or let your mechanism work, you want to cover it. Let me see. Let's see here. So the idea of, how do you write copy for an upsell? That's like such a big, broad question that I wouldn't even know where to begin to answer that question. I would say ask a more specific question, like, so here is, hang on, let me do this. Somebody asked for Todd Brown, me A to Z. There we go. I think I popped that in there. Maybe I didn't.
Yeah.
I did? Like okay. How do you say the same point in different ways? Always run out of words and mine goes blank. Like I said, I would go to, use something like Power Thesaurus. You're just looking for, if you saw that example that I popped in there, like it just, instead of saying, grow a large, instead of saying grow a large list or grow your list, what would you say instead of grow? What would you say instead of list? Instead of grow, you could say expand your database, multiply your database, right? Like instead of just saying list, you could say like multiply the volume of your prospects. Like all you're doing is just swapping out different words. And so if you need a little help with that, just go to Power Thesaurus and you can use that. So it'd be good to hear what Todd thinks. I'm not sure on what question. So let's take one more question here. Yeah, so this is a question about like, and this is right, we don't have time to get into this. This is a little bit advanced. I talk about this in A to Z, but not all promotions, people ask all the time, like, well, sometimes I'll hear, right, like lead with the offer. Like lead with the offer, just to start with. If you got a great offer, bring the offer out front and lead with the offer. And then I hear other people talk about you need a big idea and you need to be more indirect, and which one's right. The reality is that they're both right. You have to understand the context of who you're talking to and what they know. And this is why I talk about, like, you have to understand what is their awareness level, right? Are you talking to somebody that already knows the problem they have? They already know the solutions that are out there. They already know the type of solution that they want, and they already know who you are, and they know about your solution, right? Well, if you're talking to that person or those people, that's going to be a very different message than if you're talking to the person who doesn't even know that they have a problem yet, right? So let's take the person who's got low back pain. They just hurt themselves. They got low back pain, and they're unsure of what the right solution for them is. Well, you running an ad or sending them a postcard that says, "Here's why I'm the best chiropractor," in West Palm Beach, Florida. Well, right, or how to get help from the best chiropractor. You're talking to somebody who's at a different awareness. They don't even know if they want chiropractic yet. Right. And so they're at this point where they understand that they've got back pain. And so my point in sharing all this is you have to learn. Yes, learn. You have to learn the prospect awareness pyramid. And you have to then, once you understand the prospect awareness pyramid, you have to always identify what level on that prospect awareness pyramid am I targeting. Am I going it right? Because that pyramid is made up of everybody in your universe. And so, but who you are targeting is going to determine or should determine the type of message that you use and whether you can be extremely direct or whether you have to be more indirect. And so you have to understand and learn the prospect awareness pyramid. So, Todd, what happens if we try to appeal to prospects' logic before we appeal to their emotions in our copy? They're not gonna be as compelled to you're gonna try to hook them into the logic behind what it is that you are offering, and people are gonna bounce, people are gonna leave, they're not gonna remain engaged, right? Because it's not the way the human brain works, right? The reality is that the head follows the heart. The head looks for justification for what the heart wants. And so, so for upsells, what angle do you use to upsell people? There is no one angle that you'll always use. It depends on the core product that they just purchased, what the promise of the core product is. It depends on how different the upsell is from the core product. Is it more of the same? Is it a way for them to get the results quicker? Like, there's so many nuances to this that you have to understand before. There is no one right angle. It's kind of like saying, Todd, what's the right hook for a sales letter? There is no one right hook. It depends on a lot of factors. Let's do one more, Sam.
There's one about bullets, writing bullets and fascinations without introducing the product prematurely. It's from Aramis. I probably got the name wrong.
So would you only use bullets after the offer transition? No. So this is a question right here. So this will be the last one. So would you only use bullets after the offer transition? So meaning the question really is, do you only use bullets when you're talking about the product? And the answer is no, not at all. You can use bullets to talk about the like benefits of the mechanism, right? So like, if I wanted to hypothetically, if I wanted to, oh, you guys can't see my screen. I was going to say that if I wanted to, I could take any mechanism and say, I could have an area that talks about deploy this simple secret and and then boom, have 5 bullets that are all verb driven, like, grow amazing tomatoes or whatever, right? Like, force your neighbors to be jealous of the vegetables on your plate. Like, you could have bullets. It's just that what he is probably thinking, Sam, is his mind is going to the typical bullet of, like, let me promise the like the bullets that he'll see on the A to Z page is what he's really thinking of. So the answer to that question is no. You don't need that. Okay. So that's it. We may, I believe that we're going to send out a link for folks that, if you came on late, you should be able to watch this from the beginning. It should still be on YouTube. I would tell you that I want to end with one more kind of ultra quick commercial. I think if you recognize that copy can improve your business, can generate more sales, if you understand the value of copy, there is absolutely no better investment than you can make right now than getting the A to Z copywriting workshop recording bundle. It's 2.5 days of A to Z. That's why it's called A to Z, including all the nuances that I referred to today that just aren't covered in any other copywriting program out there. You'll learn all the gambits, the triggers, the segues, the rebuttals, the objection covering, all from high to nitty-gritty detail. You will not need another copywriting training program. You get a bunch of bonuses, including the monster decade plus physical swipe file mailed to your house. It's an unbelievable training program that will put you on the path to insane copy. And I do not say that lightly. I guarantee that you will experience tremendous growth in your copywriting chops. You could go over and grab it it certainly isn't cheap. It's 2.5 days of the best. And like I said, swipe file that cost me in shipping and printing alone $250. You could go to toddbrown.me/AZ. toddbrown.me/AZ. With that, we're out of here. Sam, great job, buddy. Enjoyed hanging out with you today. As always, ladies and gentlemen, Sam Woods, Sammy Slamma Jamma, Sammy the Stallion, a.k.a. Snivy in the flesh.
Todd the Troll.
Love you. Love you, buddy. You guys and gals are out of here. Go get the A to Z copywriting workshop. You're going to love it. Take care, everybody.